Welcome back to Linda Arsenal Updates. I am going to take you straight into one of the most important situations unfolding at Arsenal Football Club right now, not on the pitch, not in the transfer market, but in a conversation that will shape everything that happens at this club for the next several years. Mikel Arteta and Arsenal are in contract talks, and the details of what Arteta is asking for tell you everything about where this club stands, what it needs, and what could happen if the two sides fail to reach an agreement. Let us get into it. The situation is already in motion. Initial discussions between Arteta and the Arsenal hierarchy have already taken place. Those conversations have been described as heading in a positive direction. That matters, because when contract talks at big clubs go quiet or cold, it usually means something is wrong. Here, both sides are talking and the atmosphere is constructive. The person driving these talks from Arsenal's side is Josh Kroenke, the co-owner who's been at the centre of key decisions at this club. It is now clear that Josh Kroenke has taken a personal interest in making sure Arteta stays. That is significant. When ownership gets directly involved in a manager's contract, it signals that this is not just routine business, this is a priority. Now, Arteta will enter the final year of his current deal this summer. That means the clock is ticking. It is not yet a crisis, but it is a conversation that cannot wait forever. The club knows it, Arteta knows it, and the fact that talks have already begun confirms that neither side wants this situation to drag on into uncertainty. The evidence suggests that full negotiations will recommence at the end of the season. Both parties have agreed that right now is not the moment to finalise anything. The focus is entirely on Arsenal's push for the Premier League title and the Champions League. That is the right call, but make no mistake, the contract situation is very much alive in the background. Now, let us be clear about what is actually at stake here. Arteta has been at Arsenal since December 2019. He has completely transformed this football club. In that time, Arsenal have gone from a team struggling for direction to a side that currently leads the Premier League by 9 points. They are also in the Champions League, where they hold a 1-0 first-leg advantage over Sporting CP. Opta have identified Arsenal as favourites to win the Champions League this season. The reality for the club is simple. If Arteta were to leave, everything built over the last 6 years becomes uncertain. The playing style, the squad dynamics, the trust between the manager and the players, all of it is connected to this one individual. Losing him would not just be losing a manager. It would be losing the architect of a rebuild that is on the verge of producing something historic. That is what is at stake, and that is why the details of these contract talks matter so much. Now, before I go deeper into exactly what Arteta is asking for, let me say this. If you are on this channel because you want real analysis, not just headlines, but the full picture of what is happening at Arsenal, then hit that subscribe button right now. Linda Arsenal Updates is where you get the deeper conversation. Subscribe and stay with me to the end of this video, because we are only just getting started. Let's now go step by step through what we know about the demands Arteta has placed on the table. It is now clear that Arteta has two specific conditions that need to be satisfied before he commits to a new deal. These are not vague requests, these are defined requirements, and understanding them gives you a window into how Arteta thinks about his role at this club. The first demand is financial backing. Arteta wants a guarantee that the owners will continue to support the club financially at the level they have done in recent years to keep Arsenal competitive at the highest level. This is not unusual for a manager of his standing, but it is important to understand why he is asking for this now. The situation is that Arsenal have reached a level where competing for the Premier League title and the Champions League simultaneously is the expectation, not the aspiration. To sustain that, the club needs to continue investing in the squad. Arteta has already seen what that investment can produce. The squad he has built has pushed Manchester City right to the wire in recent seasons and is now on the verge of finishing the job. He is essentially asking the ownership to confirm in writing through the terms of his contract that they will not pull back from the investment model that has got Arsenal to this point. It is a demand born from ambition, not doubt. Arteta wants to keep building. He wants to be sure the club wants the same thing. The evidence suggests that the ownership is fully aligned with this vision. The investment in the squad in recent years confirms that Josh Kroenke and his family understand what it takes to compete at this level. So while this demand may sound bold, it is unlikely to be the major sticking point in these negotiations. The second demand is salary. This is where things become more complicated. And it is important to be direct about this. Arteta currently earns £10 million per season as Arsenal manager. On top of that base salary, he receives an additional £5 million as a bonus every time he qualifies for the Champions League. So in a season where Arsenal qualify for Europe's top competition, which they have done consistently, his total earnings reach £15 million. Now, the situation is that only two managers in the world earn more than Arteta right now. Pep Guardiola earns £20 million per season at Manchester City. Diego Simeone earns £25 million per season at Atletico Madrid. Every other manager in world football earns less than Arteta. In his new contract, the financial terms offered to Arteta will be, and these are the words being used, a key question. That language is deliberate. It signals that the salary negotiation is not a formality. It will require genuine discussion. Arteta is aware of where he sits in the global managerial pay structure, and he will want his new deal to reflect his standing in the game. Now, let us be honest about what this means. Arsenal are being asked to move into territory that puts Arteta at or near the very top of managerial salaries in world football. That is not an unreasonable ask, given what he has achieved and what he is on the verge of achieving. But it is a significant financial commitment, and the club will need to think carefully about how they structure the offer. The reality for the club is that if they underpay Arteta relative to his market value, they risk sending a message that could undermine the confidence he has placed in this project. A manager of his quality has options. Other clubs will come calling if Arsenal show any hesitation. The good news is that the early tone of talks has been described as positive. The process is moving in the right direction, and crucially, both sides want this to work. Now, let us look at the broader context of this contract situation, because there are two other factors worth understanding. The first is timing. The decision has been made by all parties to pause full negotiations until the end of the season. The reasoning is straightforward. Arsenal are in a title race. They are in a Champions League quarter-final. There is no space in Arteta's mind or in the club's strategic thinking for a drawn-out contract negotiation right now. The season comes first. This is the right approach. Arteta is a manager who demands complete focus from everyone around him. It would make no sense for the club to allow a distraction of this nature to enter the dressing room environment at the most critical stage of the season. Delaying the full talks until the summer is not a sign of problems. It is a sign of professionalism and shared purpose. The second factor is the role of the club's leadership. The renewal discussions are being led by Josh Kroenke and Chief Executive Richard Garlick. Both of these individuals were central to securing Arteta's last contract extension. Their direct involvement, again, is not coincidental. It reflects the importance the club places on getting this done correctly. The fact that Kroenke and Garlick are personally leading these talks removes layers of bureaucracy from the process. When the decision makers are at the table, things tend to move more efficiently. That is another reason for optimism about the outcome. Now, let us address one more aspect of this story that cannot be ignored. The evidence suggests that Arsenal are currently at an extraordinary moment in their recent history. 9 points clear at the top of the Premier League, a Champions League quarter-final advantage, the possibility of winning a First League title in 22 years. This context is not separate from the contract talks. It is directly connected to them. Arteta has delivered on his promise. He said, trust the process. He asked for patience and investment and belief, and the results are now visible for everyone to see. That history of delivery strengthens his position in these negotiations significantly. At the same time, it creates a natural moment for the club to act decisively. If Arteta delivers the Premier League title and perhaps the Champions League this season, his bargaining position only grows stronger. Acting now before the season ends, even in the form of early positive discussions, is a smart move from Arsenal's leadership. Let me also say something about what these demands reveal about Arteta as a leader. He is not asking for security alone, he is asking for commitment. The demand for financial backing is not a manager worried about being sacked. It is a manager saying, I want to keep pushing this club forward and I need to know you are with me. The salary demand is not greed. It is a manager who understands his value and expects it to be reflected in his contract. These are the demands of someone who sees a future at this club, not someone looking for an exit. The situation is that Arteta wants to stay. The question is simply whether the terms can be agreed to reflect what he has built and what he plans to build next. The reality for the club is that getting this contract done is the single most important piece of business they will conduct this summer, more important than any transfer, more important than any squad decision, because without Arteta, the entire vision for Arsenal's next phase becomes uncertain. Josh Kroenke and Richard Garlick understand this. The talks are underway, the tone is positive, and the expectation is that a deal will be reached once the season concludes. Everything points to Arteta continuing as Arsenal manager beyond this summer. But the details of how that deal is structured, particularly around salary, will define not just the manager's future, but the ambition of this football club going forward. This is a story worth following closely, and here on Linda Arsenal Updates we will be covering every development as it happens. If you found this analysis useful, share it with a fellow Arsenal supporter. Subscribe if you are not already part of this channel. And stay tuned, because as this season reaches its final weeks, there will be no shortage of stories to break down together. Thank you for watching Linda Arsenal Updates.